Hey guys, I have a really important question to ask you. Here's the question. In Mark 13, where Jesus gives the Olivet Discourse, this is where he predicts the destruction of Jerusalem that occurred in 70 AD. During that occurrence, it's apparently a prophecy. So the question I'm asking you, which is a very important question by the way, is pretty simple. Is this actually a prophecy? Is Mark 13 a prophecy? Is Matthew 24 a prophecy? And if it really is, how do you know it? Well, stick around because after the intro, that's what we're going to be talking about. Well, hello and welcome back to the channel. If this is the first time you're here, hello, it's nice to see you. This is a Bible study channel, and what we do here is study the Bible because we take the Bible seriously, and we seriously study the Bible. We talk about theology and history and culture and geography and many other things, pretty much everything that has to do with the Bible. So if you are looking for an online Bible study that's absolutely free, you just found it, and you can click subscribe and the bell notification. My name is Adam Jordan Clark, and I publish a brand new video every single day. And I also have to tell you this, we're spending the entire summer, that's June to August, about 90 days, and here we're coming up on the end of June. We're spending the whole summer talking about eschatology, which is the end times, the study of last things, the great white throne of judgment, the angels, the seven churches in Revelation, the book of Revelation, the rapture, Jesus' second coming, the clouds, Armageddon, all the cool stuff that everybody likes to talk about. And so today, we're going to be going over a passage in Mark 13, actually. It's also recorded in Matthew 24, but this is known as the Olivet Discourse, and this is basically where Jesus predicts the end of the world and the destruction of Jerusalem, or whatever. And so we're going to be asking the question, is this even really a prophecy? And to some people, this might seem like an absurd question, but trust me, stick around to the rest of this video, and you'll find out how it's not absurd at all to ask this question. In fact, it's actually very valid. In fact, these are the kinds of questions that we should be asking about the Bible. We should not be so naive to just accept blatantly when somebody tells us something. Like a really good example is the book of Revelation. It says that it's a prophecy. Well, that's cool and everything. That doesn't mean that it's actually a prophecy. Another really great example is 1st and 2nd Timothy. It says that it was written by the Apostle Paul, but the evidence inside the book tells you that Paul probably did not write that book. So just because the words are there doesn't actually mean that it's true, doesn't actually mean that it's like that. And I know that's very controversial, and American evangelical Christians absolutely hate that, particularly the church folk. They just hate me saying that. They hate hearing anybody say that. Quite frankly, as soon as you say something like that, like the stuff I just did, you get blacklisted. Okay, they kick you out. They never want anything to do with you. They think you're a heretic and a false teacher and all that kind of stuff. But let me tell you something. It's really incredible because when you go to the Society of Biblical Literature and you look at these scholars who are there, and most of these guys are evangelicals, or a lot of them are. And if you actually look at what conservative scholars say about the Bible, it would actually sound very liberal to you. It would sound very bad. It'd sound like the stuff you're hearing out of Princeton and Yale and all those crazy theologians and scholars. They're making stuff up because they don't want to believe the Word of God. Dude, most scholars are Christians. I mean, they are. Most scholars believe the Bible. They live it out religiously. They believe it in their hearts religiously. However, you can't live under this crazy notion that every single word, every single comma, every single period is perfect. That's absurd. It's not true. So, now that rant is done, and a whole bunch of people on the internet are going to be pissed off with me, that's fine. You can comment below and tell me how mad you are. We're going to be asking this question. We're going to look at this passage, and I'm going to tell you why it's important to ask the question whether or not this is a prophecy. So let's go ahead and take a look at this Mark chapter 13. Here is the very first two verses, and then here is where verse 3 picks up. And there's a reason why it's actually sectioned out in this way. If you flip over to Matthew 24, you will see the same pattern. The reason why is because when Matthew wrote his gospel, which is about 10 or 15 years after 70 AD, he copied directly from Mark. Most scholars date Mark around 70 AD. I know what you're probably thinking. You're probably saying, well, Jordan, this was in 70 AD. It was written in 70 AD. And by your own admission, it means it's a prophecy. Hold on a second, cowboy. Okay, it could have been written at the end of 70 AD. It could have been written 71 AD. Could have been written 69 AD. Could have been, Could have been, right? So don't get too hasty is what I'm trying to say. Look at this passage. It's very important to pay attention to the geography here because that's the most important part. All the other stuff doesn't matter. It's the geography because my argument and my question is really about geography. So in verse 1 it says, as Jesus was going out of the temple courts, which means he's in Jerusalem, he's in the temple courts. You look at a map, that's all you got to do. Look at a map, find out where Jerusalem is, and look for the temple courts inside the city. So Jesus is in the temple courts, and one of his disciples said to him, Teacher, look at these great buildings and these great amazing stones. Aren't they just miraculous buildings? And Jesus said to him, while they're in Jerusalem, he says to them, do you see what great buildings these are? Not one stone will be left upon another. You see the quote mark? Okay, so the story just ends. Okay, now you pick up in verse 3, which there's a split in the text. I have them outlined for you so you can see it. Here's part 1, and here is part 2. My question primarily is about part 2. All right, so just to be clear on that. I will also clarify really quickly before we get too far into this video. I think that these are actually authentic words of Jesus. Verse 1 and 2, 100% I believe that this is good evidence to predict that Jesus predicted the destruction of Jerusalem, right? But that's all that it is. All his only prediction is not one stone will be left upon another, right? And here's why. Here's why I think that. Because when we come down here to verse 3 and we pick up, it says, and as he was sitting on the Mount of Olives, opposite the temple. I'll draw a map on my hands real quick because I don't have a map to show you right now, but you can look one up if you want. Basically, here's Jerusalem. It's a little circle, and on the east side, here's the temple courts. Now, Jerusalem's actually built on 2 hills, okay? And so overlooking the temple is the Mount of Olives. It's this mountain. Nowadays, it's a cemetery. It's a Jewish cemetery. But back then, it was just this big mountain. It was not a mountain, but a mount, so, a little hill. So hill went into the valley and then went up to Jerusalem. So the temple is basically, here's the temple, and the Mount of Olives is like this, looking down at it. So Jesus says inside the temple, in the temple courts in Jerusalem, he says, not one stone will be left upon another. Then he walks out of the city. How long it took him, we don't know, blah, 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 blah. He walks out of the city, apparently. That's what it tells us. Now he's sitting up on the Mount of Olives, and he's pointing down to the city, and he says, hey, guys, I'm going to tell you this amazing stuff. And so here's what comes out of his mouth, apparently. He says, and as Jesus was sitting on the mountain, Peter, James, John, and Andrew came to him privately and said, tell us, when will these things happen, and what will be the sign of your coming, and all this kind of stuff, or whatever. It actually doesn't say sign of coming here in Mark. It does in Matthew, but not here in Mark. It actually says, when will these things happen, and what will be the sign when all these things are about to be fulfilled or accomplished? That's what it says right there. And so Jesus began to say, watch out that no one deceives you, for many will come in my name, saying, here he is, and here he is, and you will hear wars and rumors of wars, and don't be alarmed, because this must happen, and because the end is still not yet. For nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there will be earthquakes in various places, and there will be famines and all kinds of other crazy things. All right, so my question here is very simple. This is apparently a prophecy, or what people highly regard as the prophecy. But it's actually quite bizarre, because when you go up here to this first verse, most people don't actually hold or at least talk about verses 1 and 2, or at least verse 2, talking about being a prophecy. And so my question that I'm asking you is this. In Mark 13 and Matthew 24, when Jesus is sitting on the Mount of Olives, and he delivers this speech known as the Olivet Discourse, my question to you is this. Is that actually a prophecy? Okay, I'm admitting that when he was in Jerusalem, most definitely that's a prophecy. There's no way to get around that historically. I mean, that's a good case historically. However, the rest of the stuff very well could have been added by somebody else as a tradition later on down the road to make Jesus seem like he predicted the temple. And I know that's going to hurt a lot of people's feelings. The church folk are really pissed off because I just said that. But look, dude, seriously, this is not a church channel. We're not a ministry. We're not a church. That's not what we do here. This is a Bible study channel. Number 1, we take the Bible seriously. Number 2, we seriously talk about the Bible. We're not afraid to talk about stuff like this. We're not afraid to ask questions like this. That's what we do here. If you don't like it, I'm sorry. You don't like it. But we ask these types of questions. We talk about these kinds of things because they are important. They're very important. So my question is very simple, and I want you to answer in the comments below. Do you think, there's 2 questions actually, do you think that this is actually a prophecy? That's number 1. Number 2, how do you know that it's a prophecy? How can you actually argue with some type of evidence that this is a prophecy? that Jesus really did go on to say all these things. We know for a fact that he said not one stone will be left upon another. That's pretty obvious. What about the rest of the stuff? How do you know that that's actually authentic words from Jesus? And how do you know that it's prophecy? Let me know in the comments below. Listen, if you like this video, let me know in the comments below. If you don't like the video, let me know in the comments below. And also, if I hurt your feelings, you got upset because I said some stuff that doesn't fit in the church world, let me know. Just go ahead and tell me. I have some more playlists up here if you want to go and check them out. Don't forget to click the big red A, because when you do, you subscribe to the channel and you get a brand new video just like this every single day. My name's Adam Jordan Clark. Thanks for watching, and as always, I will see you in the next video.